You know the person who notices the exact moment someone's tone changes in a group chat, 3 messages before anyone else clocks it. The one who walks into a room and can tell in about 2 seconds who is annoyed with whom, even though nobody has said a word. They catalogue all of it. The pause before someone answers, the tightness in a jaw, the joke that landed half a second too late. And then they say nothing. They just keep the read to themselves, adjust their own behavior slightly, and carry on as if none of it happened. If that's you, you've probably been told it's a gift. People call it emotional intelligence, or being perceptive, or having good instincts about people, and sometimes that is exactly what it is. But for a lot of people who live this way, it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a job that never clocks out, one where you're working even in rooms that are completely safe and nobody else knows any work is happening at all. Here's what's actually happening. Somewhere in you, a threat detection system is switched on, not because you're in danger right now, but because some part of your brain is still checking. And once that system is on, it doesn't just add scanning as one more task on your plate. It reaches in and pulls resources away from the part of your brain that's supposed to decide what deserves your focus and what doesn't. Attention stops being something you direct. It becomes something that gets grabbed again and again by anything that could be read as a warning sign. A flat tone, a slow reply, a look that lasted a beat too long. Psychologists have a name for this, attentional control theory, but the name matters less than what it means. The noticing isn't a choice you're making. It's a system doing its job a little too well. This isn't just a personality quirk. It shows up under lab conditions. Across more than 100 studies, researchers have found that people with higher anxiety consistently orient their attention toward threat-related cues faster than people who aren't anxious, and they do it involuntarily. You cannot simply decide to stop noticing. The noticing happens before the deciding does. Here's the part most people miss. This scanning is expensive, even when nothing bad ever happens. One of psychology's classic attention experiments had people watch a screen for hours, looking for a signal that rarely came. The result became one of the most replicated findings in attention research. Accuracy drops within the first 30 minutes of watching, even though the task demands almost nothing physically. Simply paying attention, on the off chance that something happens, wears down the brain's capacity to keep paying attention. Now stretch that experiment out, not across 30 minutes, but across every room you walk into, every conversation, every silence that goes on a beat too long for your entire adult life. It's no wonder you're tired at the end of a day where, on paper, nothing happened. So where does this always-on mode come from? Researchers who study child development have spent years tracking how a child's stress response system gets calibrated by their early environment, and unpredictability turns out to matter more than danger itself. A child who grows up with a caregiver who is sometimes warm and sometimes explosive, with no reliable pattern for which one is coming, doesn't get to relax between incidents. The nervous system adapts by staying switched on, because in that environment, switched on is what kept them safe. It doesn't reset automatically once the environment changes. You can move out, build a calm life, surround yourself with steady people, and still be running the scanning software that a much less steady childhood installed. Nobody sat you down and taught you to read a room this closely. You built the skill the way you'd build a callus, through repeated pressure on the same spot, until it stopped hurting and started looking like talent. The staying quiet part isn't a separate trait bolted onto the noticing. It's the same system doing the same math. If you grew up somewhere unpredictable, saying what you noticed out loud, "You seem upset, did I do something?" didn't reliably make things better. Sometimes it made things worse, and there was no way to know in advance which version you'd get. So the two skills split apart. The noticing stayed automatic because it kept you prepared. The speaking became optional because it kept backfiring until your brain stopped offering it as a choice at all. That split doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you into meetings you don't speak up in, relationships where you swallow the thing you clearly saw, friendships where you quietly track who's pulling away weeks before you'd ever say it out loud. You carry the read, you just never hand anyone the receipt, and because nobody sees the work, nobody accounts for how much of your day gets spent doing it. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because not everyone who notices everything is anxious. There's a separate, well-studied trait called sensory processing sensitivity, a nervous system that processes all incoming information more deeply, not only threats. Research on this trait consistently finds that roughly 3 in 10 people fall into a highly sensitive range, with most other people somewhere in the middle and a smaller group at the low end. The effect isn't just about catching danger early. Their brains respond more strongly to good things too. A piece of music, a kind gesture, someone else's joy. Which is why this version of noticing can feel enriching rather than draining. The difference is what the noticing is looking for. Genuine sensitivity takes in a room the way you'd take in a piece of music, texture, detail, feeling, without a specific danger to find. Anxious hypervigilance takes in a room like a metal detector, sweeping back and forth for one specific thing. Is something wrong? Researchers are upfront that these two traits can overlap and feed each other, which is exactly why they get confused so often. But there's a rough test you can apply. If you say nothing because you're absorbing the world for its own sake, that's sensitivity. If you say nothing because some old part of you is still waiting to find out whether this room is safe, that's a nervous system that never got the memo the danger is over. Either way, the exhaustion is real, and it was never a character flaw. It was a system built to keep a much younger version of you safe, and it's still running long after it needed to. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this video gave you something to think about, do one small thing. Subscribe to CoolMyMind Psychology. Every video here unpacks the hidden psychology behind how we think, feel, and act, and subscribing is how you'll never miss the next one. Take care of your mind, and I will see you in the next video.